Today, we are talking about the top tips that you need to know before you start doing Scrum. Let's do this.
So we know that Scrum is quite prescriptive about the actual framework, but then a little light on detail about what you need to do before your first sprint. But it's intended to be quite lightweight. You just need a product owner with a vision for the product, a list of work to be done, and a team of people to do the work. And that's it. Effectively, you've got enough to start Scrum. So what else do we think that you really need to be effective with Scrum?
We definitely need to get going that vision for our product. How is our product going to delight our customers? How's it going to be unique and competitive in the marketplace? What's this thing that we're going to use Scrum to build that's going to be great for our company? And we need that goal of where we're going, and we need that product owner with the vision.
Yeah, those two things, I guess, go hand in hand. You need someone who's got that strong, powerful understanding of the product that they want to build.
Yeah. And we want to start with the why. Why are we building this product? Why are our customers going to love it? And then move on to the what and the how. If we start with why, we can engage the team. We want to get the team motivated. We want to ensure the team have a common understanding about why we're doing this thing. So we're all like pulling in the same direction.
Nice. My next point would be that Scrum is a lightweight framework and that the temptation is to immediately change it when you run into problems. Don't change Scrum, change the way that you work to take advantage of Scrum. In the same way that you need to understand what your vision of the product is, you also need to understand the advantages of using the Scrum framework. And you're going to do that by doing Scrum by the book, at least for the first few sprints.
Totally. We need to understand that we don't get to pick and choose, unfortunately. We need to learn the rules and follow the rules initially. Scrum's immutable. We stop doing any one part of it and the whole thing stops working. So you're totally right. We need to understand that we're going to have to do this the whole lot.
Yeah, it's not a cookbook. You can't just pick and choose little bits. If you want to do Scrum, you've got to try the whole framework as it is, because every part has a very specific purpose.
That leads on to the next thing that I thought. We need to understand that Scrum is a framework and we're going to have to figure out how to make it work for us. Scrum isn't a set of best practices. It's not going to tell us how to achieve what we want. So we need to be prepared for that. We need to understand that Scrum is going to help us solve our problems. It's not going to solve our problems for us.
Yeah, it's a framework, not a set of best practices. It's not a methodology. So it's not going to be a step-by-step guide for how we approach everything. It's really just the starting point for how we approach to solve these complex problems.
So here's another thing we need to understand coming on from that. We need to understand that initially it's going to look like Scrum is creating more problems. It's going to look like Scrum won't work for us. This is a natural conclusion to draw. The increased transparency that we're going to get as a result of this is going to make all of these issues visible, and it will look like Scrum's causing them. Scrum's going to amplify the good stuff that we do, and it's going to amplify the bad stuff that we do. And we need to be prepared for that.
Yeah, Scrum does not solve your problems, but Scrum will very quickly make your problems transparent to one and all. It's then going to be up to you to solve them. And a lot of people find that a little bit of a shock.
People get very excited about this new way of working when they start, and then naturally regress to the old way of working as problems become more apparent. And we need to understand that that's a natural thing that's going to happen, and just be prepared for that.
And that leads quite nicely onto one of my points, that this is a radically different way of working. People kind of slide into Scrum thinking that fundamentally it's the same as what they were doing before, but maybe with a 15-minute meeting at the beginning of the day. And nothing could be further from the truth. Doing Scrum is an invasive change. It requires the team to work in a different way. It requires you to structure your work in a different way. It requires a lot more transparency. It demands a lot more from the team. It demands a lot more engagement with stakeholders. So I think that understanding that this is a completely different way of working is something you really want to take on board before you start that first sprint.
Totally. We need to understand that we need to be open-minded about this whole new way of working, and that we are going to try stuff, and sometimes, often, we're going to fail in that stuff. And that's okay. The value is in the learning. But we need to understand that we are going to try and we are going to fail. That's not a reflection on Scrum. That's what Scrum's kind of designed to do. That's a good thing. So let's not be surprised when that happens and treat it as a negative. There's only positives.
That is a really good point. And one of the things that isn't on my list but should have been would be embracing failure. Learning that to fail is okay as long as we fail fast, learn from it, and we try not to fail in the same way twice.
Yes.
Yes.
So let's talk about people. To do Scrum well, we need a good team, not simply a group of people. So we're going to need to look at who we've got in our organization. What does our current team look like? Inspect that and understand that these guys are now going to need to work together as a team even more. And that may mean reshuffling things around. It may mean people adapting new ways of working, changing what they've been doing for a long time. And there's going to be resistance to that. So we need to be prepared for that and find ways as Scrum Masters to make that change more positive and more acceptable and understandable to the team.
So that's really interesting, that distinction you're making about a team being different from a group of people. Sounds fairly obvious, but what do we mean by that?
I think the best way I've heard to describe it is a team have a common goal. If you look at a football team, they have a common purpose to win the match, to make their team more successful. A group of people don't necessarily have a common goal. They could have conflicting interests. What makes a team is that they're working together towards a common goal. And this comes back to what you said at the start about having a product vision. That vision is the goal. That vision binds the team together.
One of my old managers was a big Liverpool fan. And when Liverpool were having a bad game, he used to say that their back four looked like they'd never been formally introduced. And I think that's a really good analogy, a really good example of how you can have the best individuals on the pitch or in your team doing the work. But unless they're playing together, you're not going to get the end result that you want.
And this comes back to a quote that you use so often, which I love, is that in Scrum, we don't believe in magic. Teams don't just magically form. Teams are created and they work towards being a successful team. And the team are going to need to put the effort into becoming a successful team when they go on this Scrum journey.
Yeah. And the next step, which a lot of teams find quite a struggle, is that they're going to have to work with stakeholders. Scrum and really all Agile approaches believe that we want to work with our end users, our stakeholders, in order that they can understand the progress that we're making and we can get that feedback. And if you're running your sprint reviews and you're not getting your stakeholders involved, you're really missing that crucial opportunity to inspect and adapt your plan for the product. You need to get your stakeholders involved.
We need to get buy-in from our stakeholders, and we need to get used to talking to our stakeholders, everyone in the team. This could be a new skill that the team needs to learn, how to talk to our stakeholders and elicit that really valuable feedback. Perhaps the development team aren't used to being customer focused. Perhaps they're not used to asking customers directly, hey, what do you think? What should we be doing? What are your opinions? Those are skills that the team are going to need to develop, because that feedback, like you say, is so important. That's at the heart of the iteration. It's at the heart of what we're trying to achieve.
Yep. Okay, next point is you're going to have to pick a sprint length. It might be quite difficult before you've started sprinting. A lot of people think that the 2-week sprint is something magical, but we know that we don't believe in magic. There is no perfect sprint length. You might want to think about choosing the shortest sprint length that you can, and then if you're not able to get to done, extending it. The shorter your sprint length, the more feedback loops that you'll have. So something that you'll need to do before you can really start sprinting is picking that sprint length.
And it's important to remember that's not set in stone. We just need to make an informed decision at the start about how long can we go working in the same direction before we gather feedback from our customers at the explicit review. But that's open to inspection and adaptation too. We simply need to make that initial informed decision.
Exactly that. The Scrum Guide says you want to be consistent about your sprint length, but it doesn't say that you can't ever change your sprint length.
It's going to be important to understand that there will be unexpected consequences of this change in the way we're working, the change in the way we're delivering stuff to our customers. We can forecast some of what that change will look like. But one thing we know for certain is that most of it probably won't look like we expect. There's going to be unexpected consequences to doing this. And we need to be prepared for that. Being forewarned is forearmed. So although we can go into this thinking we know what it's going to look like, we also need to go into it understanding that we don't actually know what it's going to look like. And we're going to have to inspect and adapt as we go along. Unexpected consequences to what this whole thing is going to look like.
Basically, we want to let go of that need for certainty and embrace a little bit of experimentation and learning as we go along the journey.
Being comfortable or getting used to being outside of our comfort zone, perhaps, recognizing that there is fear, uncertainty, and doubt in whenever we do anything new. And this is no different. As we go along, we learn more, and it becomes less scary and less unfamiliar.
And I think my last point is that you are going to have to develop a new skill, which is breaking down your product into smaller features which you can get done within your sprint. I think this is something which is maybe underplayed, how difficult teams find it at the beginning, because most teams new to Agile, new to Scrum, they're used to thinking about delivering the product in one big bang. But if you're moving into Scrum, you're going to have to break that down into smaller and smaller features that you can get done. And that's the biggest challenge for teams which are new to Scrum, in my opinion.
That's a big challenge for the development team, changing how they think about work and helping the team to understand that how to do that. So we're also going to need to invest in perhaps new skills for the team. There's going to be a financial impact to this change. We may need to invest in some sort of Agile coach. We need a Scrum Master on the team. So the business need to understand that there's going to be a real world financial impact to this change. And we're going to need to find a way to ensure the business understand the value of that impact and so that we can communicate that effectively.
And one of the things that Scrum is great at is giving you that return on investment, being very transparent about that. You know what your sprint length is, you know what your team size is, so you should be able to work out what your team cost is. So you should be getting that very clear return on investment because you know what you've got done. But you are thinking about the return on investment in a different way in a Scrum project. So just to wrap up, final point is the enemy of Scrum is not Kanban. The enemy of Scrum is not waterfall. The enemy of Scrum is bad Scrum, just to massacre yet another Jeff Sutherland quote.
I'm going to add to that by crowbarring in our favorite quote, is that this is a marathon, not a sprint. These changes aren't going to happen overnight. This is going to take a while and it's going to constantly evolve. And that's fine. On day one, we don't need to be jumping in to be doing Scrum. This is going to take a while, and the teams need to be prepared that they're in this for the long haul because it's going to improve their ways of working. It's going to make their lives better. So we don't expect results overnight, and we need to ensure that everyone is in the loop with that.
So we're saying it's not a sprint.
It's a marathon, not a sprint. But it's also a sprint with a fixed length that can change.
A marathon and a sprint.
It's what?
Scrum Chat.
Scrum Chat.
Three minutes of nowhere. Okay, go. There's a plane going overhead. Okay, plane's going. Right, I think it's gone now. There's a car. I'm not used to going first. It's quite nerve-wracking. So, Scrum, I don't know why I did that voice. That voice is all Whatever. Yes. I'll start again then.
Start again, yeah.
Stop looking like you're going to interrupt me. It's putting me off. That's good.
So, Dunk, what you need